that if you're alert and are studying it as you should, you'll see that it's out of the Old Testament. These two little letters are going to haunt us. I want you to understand that, again, you want to perhaps go to the newspaper or to Fox News or News Nation and find out how the book is being fulfilled. I think you're a bonehead if you do that, since this is a book about the Scriptures, soaked in the Bible. And if you want a real interpretation that John would nod in affirmation over, you've got to go do your homework. I don't know if I included Jordan's quote. James Jordan says, the real key to understanding the book of the Revelation is read your Old Testament about 20,000 times. Now that may have been, and if you know Jim Jordan, it's not much of an exaggeration. He's simply saying, this is going to give you, and that's how we're going to treat it. I can't expect you to read your Old Testament 20,000 times in order to take this, but hopefully you're going to get information that'll send you, and you're going to go back and you're going to study. AI, my good old friend Al, in an overview says the book of the Revelation contains a massive amount, a large volume of Old Testament echoes, allusions, types, and it exceeds 1,000. And you'll see that, well, in between, what do we got? 500, this is about close to 800 there, but AI says it's closer to 1,000. You're going to get into this and see that those may be underestimating. Go ahead.
Which AI is that?
I don't know. It's the one on my phone, the one that was doing all the talking when I was hearing things. Yeah. No, find out. I know there is no two scholars that come to the same total. They all differ. And we need to understand that we're going to have a lot of Bible in this class, and you may see, and I hope you do, and share with me things that I haven't seen. And what John does, he doesn't do the Old Testament the way Jesus and Paul did. They would cite a passage in order to teach through it, to expound it. John doesn't do that. Look at what John does. John doesn't write about the Old Testament. He writes with it. So when we come to that passage in this first chapter, we're going to come to a passage of Jesus being described. Post-resurrection Jesus. Hair is white, gold sash, bronze legs, on and on it goes. You need to understand that is going deep in the Old Testament. And he's explaining to Jewish Christians in the first century, in those 7 Asian Minor churches, about how Old Testament Jesus is. And I coined a word. Look up here. I'm going to have it patented. And if you ever use it without my permission, I will sue the pants off of you. The Revelation is the most Old Testamentist book there is in the Bible. Old Testamentist. Old Testamentiest. I don't know. You get the idea. In the New Testament, it's the most Old Testament book. And this bunch of slides and most of your handouts are to that very end. Again, I am pushing something to you. I'm getting you well-groomed, well-oiled for us flipping pages in our Bibles back and forth. So not only do we need somebody to take cookies, not only do you need to bring your pages, I want you to bring your Bibles. Don't depend on what you get here. You've got to work through this, and there is nothing more important than a Christian thumbing through their scriptures. Man, does God love that musical instrument played. I have set up a series of charts. Here is the Old Testament passages. Here's where that allusion, that type, that same imagery, that symbol, that concept, that idea shows up in Revelation. So you open the scriptures up and you get a week of creation. Step over into Revelation, and he really is taken. He loves, I made this word up too for a class in the seminary. He's a septophile. Septophile. Septa is 7 in Latin. Phile, lover. Philadelphia, septophile. He loves 7s. His gospel has got 7s, 7 I ams, 7 miracles, 7 gifts. He goes by 7s. In the first 2 chapters, you get 7 days accounted for. In the second chapter, spotlight falls on Adam and Eve. Check this. In Revelation, Adam and Eve show up because he's the new Adam. Who's his Eve? Look around you. Look around you. Look at the other people. Say, hello, Eve. We're Eve. We're the bride. And this is a huge concept. I got a call today from somebody wanting to know about when did God take a bride? You get the garden scene when we go into, certainly you know it in the end of the book, the garden scene in 21, 22. But you get it as early as the second chapter, paradise. He's doing something here. He is saying, I know what I'm writing. I'm writing the last book. I'm writing the 66th book in this Bible. You know how I want to go out? And again, it's John working and doing, but it's the Spirit of God moving him on this. We're going to see it, and then you're going to see it. This is where it's introduced. This is where it's fulfilled. This will set you free. You get a tree of life here that really becomes the trouble, the source of all trouble. This is where Adam and Eve sinned. At the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Here, the tree of life, they couldn't eat from it. Here, we get to eat of it. In paradise, the tree of life. We have a serpent by the 3rd chapter. You get a dragon. It's a serpent and Eve, who is the woman. In the 12th chapter, which is the very center, look, 12 is where this comes in. It's pointing to the woman and the dragon. The whole book revolves around that, goes to it and then resolves from it. So that is as major as it is in Genesis 3. Dragon and the woman. And then read a little bit, and you can see, I'm not being complete. There's things in here. You get the rainbow here. Yeah, but understand, here, and I've mentioned this before, you can tell I'm boiling with material for you to eat from. Here, at Genesis 1:1, God creates the heavens and the earth. Verse 2, and the earth was dark, and it was watery, and it was shapeless, and it's void. Here, before this, before the rainbow, the time of the flood, 6 to 9. The time of the flood, God takes it and puts it back. God loves cycles. God does things in cycles. What he makes fails because of man. Man sins. And it deteriorates. And then God judges it. Then he recreates it. What happens here? They sinned. The people sinned. Wickedness covered the earth. What does he do? He takes it right back to this. Watery, no life, shapeless, and dark. Then out comes the new people. And when Noah steps out, What does Noah do? He builds a little garden. So there's repeats all through here. You'll learn. But a rainbow, you're familiar with it. Well, you get one in Revelation. You get a Tower of Babel. Aha! Look at this. And at this, when we get to this, if you do not do this, if you're not gripped by this, if this does not in many ways hurt you, you've not dealt right with the book of the Revelation. It's Babel here, the Tower of the Babel. But by the time John comes, it's Babylon. And if you've known your Old Testament, you know when Babylon shows up, it's never a good thing. Abraham beyond the river, that same river that Abraham was beyond in Genesis 11 and 12, it's the Euphrates. And what comes out of it is an army. Sodom and Gomorrah, Sodom. Judah as a lion, Lion of Judah. And there's more. I'm simply trying to show you this interplay of how Old Testament-y John has left. The Exodus, I'm not going to go through them all, but just note, you're going to have the expression, I am, quite a bit. Well, that was originated in the wilderness when the bush talked to Moses and said, when Moses was asking, when I go back to Egypt and they ask me, who sent you, what am I supposed to say? Tell them, I am that I am. That's picked up. And if you recall what I had said early on, when John writes in his gospel, there are 7 I ams. Plagues. River to blood. Oh, this almost sounds like his gospel. Water to blood. Where did that happen, Hera? You know any place that water turns to wine? And if you know your Old Testament, you know that Father Jacob calls wine the blood of grapes. Frogs, hail, locusts, these are all plagues. And if you can understand why they came, you'll understand why they returned. And there's differences, but they serve the same function. And you ended these 10 plagues, these 9 plagues with the 10th, which was the Passover angel, the angel of death, Passover lamb. We get a lamb. Bitter water, poison water. Sea dries up, river dries up. Song of Moses, and catch this, Song of Moses. Whew. You getting it? Manna, eagle's wings, kingdom of priests, thunder and lightning, God the Creator, the tabernacle. And then you're going to see something marvelous. And for those like Jim Morrow who went through the Gospel of John with me for so long, John's whole gospel is arranged like the temple, the tabernacle, water stories, then bread stories and light stories. And he's following, as it were, a virtual tour of the tabernacle. That's what you're getting here. You're getting the same thing. And when you get into the tabernacle, suddenly the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah, you're going to have an Ark of the Covenant. Bronze altar, an altar, gold altar, lampstands, priestly robes. This one really catches John. John gets excited with this. But when we return in 2 weeks, remember, no class next week because the ladies, the taking pounds off sensibly, are coming here to have their feast. Don't make me even smirk. It's what's happening. So they use this room and all the other rooms. They put out a spread and they spread out, and you can get the imagery. They are going to preempt it. But when we come back, you're going to see who John is. Do you know that John points, everything about John points to him being from the priestly caste. John probably, the gospel writer, was probably priest. I'll show you that when we come back in 2 weeks. But no wonder he lingers on this. The name on the forehead, Now you're thinking that's going to be some kind of forced governmental intrusion. What was that injection we had when we had to get the COVID virus thing? If that wasn't the mark of the beast, understand that comes out of the Old Testament. Name on your forehead, that's not despised. In fact, that may in fact be one of the highest honors in the Old Testament. Who gets a name on their forehead? It's the high priest, who on the mitre he wears has a gold band that says, Kadesh Yahweh, holy to Jehovah. That's the writing on the forehead. Image of the beast, well, that coordinates fairly. I'm sorry, there's one button away from my laser beam here. There's one step away from the golden, from this to this. Same guy who was dressed in these robes in Exodus is going to be the one who builds a golden calf. And that's a whole lot like the idol of the beast. Tabernacle filled with glory. Tabernacle filled with smoke. Leviticus. I'm going to run through them because we're at that point. Leviticus 23. He goes down to this far. Leviticus 23 is all the holy days. Holidays, holy days. And they're in this order. Notice there's 7 of them. Sabbath, that's the first one. That's the weekly. Then the annual. Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. First sheaf. That's the waving. Pentecost, 50 days after that. Then there's trumpets, atonement, Yom Kippur, and tabernacles, or Feast of the Booths. And notice over here, that same arrangement, the holy days, forms and shapes the movement of the revelation. It starts out on the Lord's Day. On the Lord's Day, I was in the Spirit, and I heard a voice saying, come up here. Passover, Ascension of the Lamb. First sheaf, the offering, the offering up, what happens in 4 and 5 of Revelation, the Ascension. Opening the book and fire. Pentecost celebrated 2 things. It celebrated the giving of the law. That's when they calculate the giving of the 10 Commandments. And the coming of the Spirit. Pentecost in Revelation, you know Pentecost in Acts chapter 2, where the Spirit came and the church was born. In Revelation, it's going to be the opening of this scroll, this book, and fire. Somehow the scriptures and the fire go together. Trumpets and trumpets. Atonement, blood. Tabernacles, check this out. Tabernacles is when they celebrated that time in the wilderness, the booths. So they made their little booths, and they lived in them, and it was like family time. And by the time you get to the end of the Revelation, tabernacles, booths has become a feast, a marriage supper. Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua. Now, don't be surprised. There's a lot in Joshua and Revelation. I'll get to those later. But listen, you're going to see a very major character here called the whore. The scarlet harlot, some have called her, but that comes too close to Scarlet Hera. This is just touching on it. You're going to see more. I've got whole charts, so I'm just introducing you to it now. Catch this one. You want to know about Armageddon? Well, there is no such thing as Armageddon. I know that's what your English translations, but the word is Harmageddon. It comes from Megiddo, and guess who covers that? It's in Judges, and it's also in Samuel and Kings. Let me skip through those. This is an important one. You think that this number is unique. It's not. It's used a couple of times. I mentioned that. Jezebel, yeah, she shows up early in the book. Elijah shuts up the sky, so there's a drought, and the sky is shut up in 11. 7,000 fall of Jerusalem. This is interesting. Look up here. This is interesting. Remember in Genesis, Babel and Babylon? Well, in Kings, what we have is the fall of Jerusalem. And in the Revelation, corresponding, the fall of Babylon. What are you saying, Charlie? I'm saying nothing. I'm saying we're in a book that's soaked in the Old Testament. 24 chief priests. This was David's invention. When the temple is built, David, who was not permitted to build the temple, he makes some additions that he can, and that is instruments, an orchestra, and 24 different courses of musicians. So he's the one who puts music into church. You can read all about it there. Don't be surprised then when you find there are 24 elders. John knew his Bible. And if you're going to know John, Revelation, you've got to do the same thing. So there's a Levitical choir and there's a heavenly choir. And the temple filled when Solomon dedicated it, it filled with glory. And again, not just out of Exodus, but it's also in Chronicles, the temple filled with smoke. Esther, there's more than that, but feast with gifts. And in Revelation, there's feast with gifts being given. We'll talk more about all of these. Job, chiefly it's the accuser. Revelation, the accuser. Right in that crotch passage, Revelation 12, where everything converges, that climax passage, Satan is placed. Revelation is really borrowing, or John is sensitive to the material out of the Psalms. And you just need to know that. I'll let you avail yourself of all of those. And there's even this. You know how I got the job at the seminary? I'm pointing to you because you mocked my respectable clerical collar and hair combed and all of that. That was for the seminary. I got that job because of a couple of research papers I did for a Hebrew class. And the one that set them on fire was that Proverbs. I was always taught that Proverbs is just like a bunch of fortune cookie sayings thrown all into sort of a jumbled up mess of a book. A little saying here, a little saying there. And I went to it and I played off of some other things I had seen, but I developed it on my own. I said, no, there's a storyline there. There's a storyline to Proverbs. It's got to be an ancient story if you're going to make a storyline out of it. But to that end, how many of you, following up on Wizard of Oz, how many of you have ever seen The Little Mermaid? Raise your hand if you've seen The Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid? Okay. Ariel, the prince, and then this sea hag. What's her name? Ursula? Is it Ursula? Thank you. Yeah, that's the storyline. You get the king and the queen talking to their son in the first chapter. Their son, who is the prince. And they, in effect, say, son, you're at that stage where you need to get married. There's going to be a kingdom for you, and you need to choose wisely. Make sure you are able to distinguish lady from a dame. A dame. And lady's named is Wisdom. And she'll take care of you. And she'll improve your life. And I want you to go and love Lady Wisdom. But whatever else you do, watch out for the Dame Folly. She'll give you all kinds of instant gratifications, but you don't build your life with folly. And so, in the book of the Proverbs, you get this idea that every one of us is confronted, like Eric, was that his name in Prince Eric in the... Thank you. My 4-year-old granddaughter had me dress up as Prince Eric for her Little Mermaid themed birthday party. I am so ashamed of my life. Can you take him home now? Or make him wait until we're done here? The prince had to decide. If you remember, Ursula took on the appearance of Ariel. Ariel and Ursula looked exactly alike, and that's what you've got here. So, ladies, when you end up the book with a big guilt trip, when you try and compare yourself to the Proverbs 31 lady, understand that what's being described in that perfect woman is literally wisdom. Wisdom builds a home. Wisdom brings wealth. Wisdom cares. You're not supposed to lose sight of the fact that this is a love story in Proverbs. And in the Revelation, you've got the bride of Christ and you've got the harlot of Babylon. Which one are you going to take? And do you understand how big that question is? It's most of our New Testament. Most of the New Testament goes back and forth from who you going to love? Jesus or, and you can put them in. We'll see it in time. I'm getting way ahead of myself here. Song of Songs, I already gave it to you. For those that have not been through Isaiah, you've got a wasp, not a wasp, a wasp song. Song of Solomon is the bride who's just taken with the beauty, sort of like Donna with me, describing how glorious his hair was, how chiseled his looks. Don't laugh at that. And what is the revelation? Starts with a picture of Jesus. And his hair, and his face, and his hands and arms, and out of his mouth, and it goes on and on. He's got a knock to enter into the chain. Oh, I got a knocking scene in Laodicea, the last of the letters to the 7 churches. Then there's a wasp of a bride. Wasp is an Arabic word for ascribing honor. It's a love poem describing, though. And you usually start at the top of the head and go to the feet. And sometimes you start at the feet and you go up. And I double dog dare you to read especially 4, Song of Solomon 4, and understand that's the honeymoon chamber. And when you come to some things, that's not a navel he's describing. Watch all of you run and have your devotions now in the Song of Solomon. Come to me, come to me. Isaiah, man, we could spend hours on this, couldn't we? All of those that went through it for a couple of years. It's following right behind our good friend Isaiah Ben Amoz. But catch this. I'm not going to go into much of it. You've got this. You can add to this. This is simply a chart. But he follows it along. I had mentioned to you when we were finishing this up about 2 months ago. Wine press? Yeah. Wine press. New heaven and earth? Yeah. New heaven and earth. Imagine that. It's as though John copied off of Isaiah's page. But it gets better than that. I'm not going to do much with Jeremiah or Lamentations. This is the one that'll light your fire. If he doesn't have Isaiah open near him on the book, on the island of Patmos, I know he must have had a copy of Ezekiel, or he had gone to Saturday school every week for his life because he knew Ezekiel. And he works through his book virtually chapter to chapter. Now, I've got one that you don't have, and if you want one of these, you'll have to see me. You've got this, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this. This one you don't have. I had done this for a Revelation seminar I gave long ago. Throne vision, that's Revelation 4. Throne vision is where Ezekiel starts his whole book. And notice, Ezekiel 1, 2 and 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12. Ezekiel 2, 40 to 43, 16. It comes a little jumbled, but it starts following the basic, and it's point for point. Eating the book. That's an interesting one. You'll see that in Revelation. Well, it's Ezekiel who is told to eat the book. Measuring the temple, that's almost at our climactic passage. Ezekiel gives that 40, 41, 42, 43. 4 whole chapters on measuring the temple. Jerusalem and Sodom, cup of wrath, great harlot, lament over the city, scavenger's feast, first resurrection, New Jerusalem, river of life. It's the Old Testamentist, New Testament book we've got. He does it out of Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Jonah, and there's more in this. There's more than this, than just but I'm just trying to get you to think layers. I've got to think not only of apocalyptic literature, I've got to think biblically. I've got to have the thumb of my brain stuck in the Old Testament, looking it up. Habakkuk rides out with a bow. Guess what the first rider of the 4 horsemen? He has a white horse and a bow. Zephaniah, day of Yahweh. The great day of God Almighty. Haggai, shaking heaven and earth. There's the earthquakes. There's Zechariah, who has just as much as any of the others. There's a whole study to be had here on how much John relied on Zechariah. Zechariah formed a lot of it. There's 4 horses, 4 horses. You get the idea. 2 witnesses, witnesses with lampstands. But it's not only the most Old Testament book, it's also at home in the New Testament. Revelation is full of Jesus. In the Revelation, you're going to hear familiar phrasing. You're going to see familiar themes. There's going to be terms that you're familiar with. Teachings out of the New Testament. And I've got just a few here. I'm not going to insult you and go through them all. I am going to do the same thing. There is one that I want you to see. This next slide is impossible to exaggerate how important this is. I cannot tell you how you've got to get your head around this next concept. Have I emphasized it? I need you to study this with some intent. If you get nothing else out of this tonight, I want you to come back and reflect on this next chart that I have. It's going to be insight for you that will transform how you approach the book of the Revelation. What is it? It's this comparative chart of a sermon that 3 out of the 4 gospel writers give this. Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21 all have this last sermon, this last teaching of Jesus. This was delivered on Tuesday of Holy Week. It was delivered on the Mount of Olives. That's why it's called Olivet, and discourse means teaching. Fancy word. So notice, Matthew, Mark, Luke. What is it about? You go over here. This is where they say, this is where Jesus says, listen, be on the lookout for false prophets, persecution, lawlessness, and be aware when love grows cold on those that are supposed to know me. When you come to Matthew 24, 6 to 8, Mark 13, 7 and 8, Luke 21, 9 to 11, the concepts are wars, famines. You can throw in pestilence there, an earthquake. You remember this. What's the end of the world like? False prophets will come. Persecution will break out. Lawlessness, love grow cold. There will be wars and rumors of wars. Famines, earthquakes, pestilence. It's following, all this is following the outline of Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. But do you notice? Look, get this discovery. Why didn't John write about it if it's that important that 3 out of the 4 write? And the answer is, you're presuming something. Just because you don't find it in John's gospel doesn't mean he doesn't cover this event. I hold for you, and I haven't gone into what it actually is. I hold for you, it was so important, he wouldn't confine it to just one chapter, 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. He gave it, look up here, he gave it about 15 chapters. So, I've intentionally omitted this part of it. What do you have in Revelation 1 and 2? After you get through with 1, which introduces the book, which gives you the background, what do you get? You get the 7 letters. And what do the 7 letters to the 7 churches of Asia Minor cover? Oh, false prophets, persecution, lawlessness, love grown cold. It's the very first epistle that he wrote, Ephesians. John, when he wrote to the Ephesians, you've lost your first love. What is this for? The Olivet Discourse. Jesus, we always study it with the end times in mind. I have, if you've listened to the Hall of Tyrannus for the last few weeks, what did I just buy? Okay. Okay, that's a really good thing. Do you mind, ma'am? You were trying to stretch her back out, so thank you. She's handy, man. No wonder you married her. Thank you so much. It starts, we usually jump to the false prophets, the false messiahs, the don't go back to your house to get your cloak and all of that. For the past several weeks on the Hall of Tyrannus, I've been studying the Mark 13 passage in our ongoing study of the Gospel of Mark. And what I set up is, what we do is we skip to 3 and 5, Matthew 3 and 5. We want to get to this part and all of these things. You know, this is fascinating to us. But if you do that, you miss why it was given in the first place. They had been in the temple. Jesus had cleaned things up, had come back out. They were going out and down the Kidron Valley up to Bethany, about 1.5 miles out, which is where they were hanging for headquarters that week at the home of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And as they're on the Mount of Olives to the east side of Jerusalem, 3 of the disciples, Peter, James, and John, Andrew was there too, Peter's brother, and they say, "Isn't this an amazing building?" They're looking at the temple. "Isn't this incredible?" They're dazzled by it all. And Jesus says, "I tell you, not one stone will be left on top of another here." This thing was the epitome of all things Jewish. And Jesus is standing, in fact, he's sitting when he tells them this, and he says, "Yeah, but it's all coming down." And they ask in their follow-up questions, well, when will that happen? And what is the sign of your coming and the end of the age? 3 questions in Matthew 24, 1 to 2. What's the sign of the temple going to be destroyed? What's when are you appearing, coming, and what's the sign of the end of the age? When is all this going to happen? And he tells them, when there's false prophets, wars, rumors of wars, when the church goes to witness, messengers. Listen, the word messengers in Greek is the word angelos. We cheat when we get to Matthew 24. We want it to be the end times, and so we translate it. He's going to be sending messengers to, he's going to send angels to do all the preaching. And the answer is no. Angelos is either messenger or a non-corporeal, non-bodied creature like what we think of as the winged angels. John the Baptist was called an angelos. When you read John chapters 2 and 3, pastors are referred to as angelos. Am I an angel? You know better. What am I? I'm an angel, a messenger. All I speak of is Christ. So when you see the church's witness, think New Testament here. Do you know any time in the New Testament where the church starts witnessing? Flight into the wilderness, great tribulation, false prophets. Actually, you can probably change this one to false messiahs. You're in the same place. And then the darkening, sun goes out, moon turns to blood, stars fall from the sky. All of that is in the Olivet Discourse, and it's also in the book of the Revelation. He says this is so important that he's going to give it 15, some would even say all 22 chapters to this concept. What are you saying, Charlie? I'm saying the Bible tells us what it says. So when in Matthew we see eagles gathering, eagles or vultures, and the word is the same. You can take it either way. We know when that is. Notice I have all through here these little parenthetical things. Yeah, what is this? The Deuteronomy? It's all from 28. 28. What's Deuteronomy 28? I'm glad you asked. Deuteronomy 28 is the curse on breaking the covenant. When you break the covenant, you can expect wars and famine and persecution. And the eagle part is fascinating to me in Deuteronomy 28. If you break the covenant, you're going to find an army coming against you. And they're going to devour the corpses, because that's what eagles do, like vultures. They're carrion feeders. They're going to be chewing the dead meat in the streets. There's going to be famines. You can expect nothing from me. You're not going to be fed. And so there's where you get the warnings about women will save their afterbirth to eat it. Did you know that's in the Bible? It's in the Bible. And if this is heavy, good. Because that's what this book is about. Oh, it's about glorious things. And yet, if you do not keep covenant, oh, you'll wish you had. You'll wish you had. John, Revelation. It's a New Testament book. So I showed it to you from Matthew, Mark, and Luke, how the Olivet Discourse forms a basic framework for the whole of the Revelation. And John, it's as though he previews coming attractions. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And in verse 14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Who's Jesus in the Revelation? The Word. And the Word tabernacled with us, dwelt among us. He took on flesh, dwelled among us. It's literally the word tabernacled. And what does God do with us? What is heaven for us? He's where we get to sit with God in His presence, and He dwells with us, and He will not leave us. I'm not going to have to say goodbye. John gives the Baptist ministry, and when I get to the Revelation, right at the very front, just like John's gospel, we got witnesses, or I'll say it, messengers. That's you and I. This is you and I. This is for us. I am. Satan, Satan. Woman in travail, meaning birth pains. Right smack dab in the book, chapter 12, right here at the crux of it all. A woman in birth pains. It's finished. Ooh, this is an interesting development. In Revelation, it's finished turns into the mystery is solved. I'll end with this one, I think. We'll pick it up in 2 weeks from here. Our friend John, he had an elaborate chiastic arrangement in his gospel. And for those like Jim Morrow and Brights, and I think Betty was there in those days, we went into the chiastic arrangement. It's back when the ink was still fresh on the Gospel of John. It's that long ago. We saw the chiastic arrangement of his gospel. But it's interesting in that in John's gospel, this is the Gospel of John down here, you find Jesus introduced as the bridegroom. That's what John the Baptist calls him. He says, I have to leave because my job is done. I brought the groom. I'm the shoshbim in Hebrew, means the best man. And when the best man comes, when the groom comes, the best man steps to the side. That's where he uses that famous expression, he's got to increase, I've got to decrease. So if he's the bridegroom, that's the first chapter. Second chapter, you got Jesus sitting down at a wedding. And he turns the water into wine. Amazing. All of this is setting us up for a wedding. But I don't get one in John's gospel. Why did he just pick all of that up and then just leave us hang with no bride for Jesus? And the reason is the same reason he does it in Revelation. In the book of the Revelation, the king has come. Jesus is being described in that wasp song as a king. He rules. He's the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. He's king. He's the Son of God. Here he is the Son of Man. Fully God and fully man. That's the incarnation. John begins with the king, but when I get to the end of, John begins the revelation with Jesus as a king. But when I get to the end, it's about the bride. The Spirit and the bride say, come. The marriage supper of the Lamb. It's all about weddings down here. Here comes the bride. Here comes the groom. And what happens in the Gospel of John? 22nd chapter of Revelation, you get a bride. 21st chapter of John, you get a kingdom. It's as though he crossed them. He'll begin with the king, and John saying, you know how it ended. It ended in my gospel where the king comes and rules and reigns. What happened to the bride? Oh, we're saving her for the very last thing in the Bible, in the book of the Revelation. Look up here, and in history. How important is Christ Church? How important is the Church of Jesus Christ? There's a sense in which she couldn't be more important. Just like creation week was pronounced as very good when Eve was made. Everything's made the first 6 days. Adam is there and things are good. He's pronounced them good all through the week. And when she comes along, Eve comes along, it's very good. She brings what it needs. She end of time is always feminine. Look up here. Give me your hearts on this. Do you know why, at least it's been in my family, men always die first? Men die first. My grandfathers died before my grandmothers. My dad died before I'll probably go before Donna. Why is that? It's God's way of structuring this world so that you understand that it's the queen that comes at the end, the bride that comes. The end is given to the bride, the climax, as it were. He has operated this world around the church. Let me run ahead because I've done this to myself. Acts, you got all of those. Covenantal, I'm going to skip this. You get it. We'll come back to this in 2 weeks. I'm going to skip the ethic part. Don't even look at this. Close your eyes, I said. Close your eyes. Skip that. And then we come to this. I said one of the things I know is that God loves layers. This is what I did to myself. So we've got to study some first century AE history. And guess what we're going to study a lot of? Yep, that. And then I'm going to show you something. Here's where the ethical part comes in. What I'm about to show you has been seen by no one except the guy who brought it to me. This is for my birthday. This is what my church thinks of me. I'm honored by this. Terry Welch gave me this. Hold on. I'm going to probably... It's not too late to back out, but... All right, I'll show it to you. I've had 4 layers on. Go ahead, somebody read it. This is from Terry Welch.
Don't piss me off, old people. The older we get, the less life in prison is a return.
That's from my friend here. Don't piss me off. Don't piss me off. Old people, don't piss off old people. Okay. Yeah, so that's don't piss off old people. Come on. Because I love to pick up the batteries, but you get to edit my t-shirt. So I have no idea that the only other black t-shirt I've got. Symbolic liturgy. I'm going to touch on these things very briefly in 2 weeks. Do hover over. Don't look at that. Stop. I know you're looking. I want you to hover over that one. And just think through it. And if this is about the temple being destroyed, that's what Jesus gave us. He gave us prophecy that when no stone's going to be left on top of another, then what do you think our religion is telling the city of Lincoln about? I hope for you that our discourse in Matthew 24, Mark 13, 21 is the background for Revelation 1 to 22. Questions? Are you overwhelmed? I'm sorry, Daddy? You're overwhelmed? Good. And if you thought this was going to be easy peasy, it is. I think I've got to at least get you into the habit of studying it more than just reading it. Just looking at it and pulling it up and saying, I gave my 30 minutes devotion. Scripture is to be chewed. Eat the book. That's why that second Sunday of Advent prayer haunts me. Let us read, mark, and inwardly digest your word. But to digest anything means to make it part of you. And that's what we do here. We're wanting this book that is climactic in so many ways. We want this book to be in our lives in such a way that we can feed from it. I'm hoping in many ways it's a climax of studying the Bible for you in a Bible setting or a setting like this. And if it is, then good. I've done my job and I can go on to be with Jesus. Thank you, Father, for how you've done it. I thank you for the cookies and the cake and for the handouts and those that operated the machinery, those that brought projectors in for us to see. Thank you that it's so much more improved, Lord. Pray that we study this. It's not something that we just fold up and forget about for 2 weeks. Something that we want to become really, really searching through and praying over and thinking about and coming up with questions. I look forward to the questions, Lord. Please build it in my brothers and sisters an inquisitiveness that wants not to simply be told things, but wants to engage in it all. I beg that for Jesus' sake. And we ask then as we travel home that you keep all of us safe. And make no presumption on that anymore after our sister Teresa left church and was in a really bad accident. And we're praying against the accidents, Lord. Give us sleep and rest. We ask that tomorrow we serve your purposes. Excite us about this book. I pray that you fill in all the gaps that I leave. Any of them